Hey, team players, welcome back. It looks like you might be just with me here today. Bob's still a little bit sick. Today, obviously, we're going to be doing another fantasy breakdown for the Best Ball League live draft. That'll be the main portion of this show. Got into it with one of the guys talking about the comments, as we always like to do, a very interactive conversation we do here at Local Football Flavor. Feel free to send your comments either while watching live every 3:45 on Mondays and Wednesdays in the off season, as well as hitting us up with the comments after the fact. So we're going to talk about one of those conversations I was having with a fan there later on. And today, let's see what the next element of free agency has done to mess with this best ball draft. Let's dive into some fun and have some fun. So, yes, indeedy, firing up the draft right now, waiting for it to fill up. And one of the things that I want to bring up and talk about in the show on Monday, I talked about how, long story short, Garrett Wilson isn't one of my guys, wasn't one of my guys last year. And one of the fans came back to me and said, hey, Garrett Wilson finished 10th in total PPR, 11th in half PPR total stats. How can you say that he was a bust? And long story short, my answer is this: is that first off, in best ball, your total doesn't really mean that lot. A large part of why Garrett Wilson was so successful is he didn't get hurt. He only averaged 23rd in pure average in half PPR. And when you look at the best ball formula overall, it's all about your spike weeks. And as a wide receiver, you basically need to be above 15 to be having a quality spike week. And Garrett Wilson only did that 3 times. So drafting him in the first round for a guy who was an 11 average is not what you're looking for. You're much better as a general best ball strategy of just floating 7 all or nothing players and letting the statistics of math balance itself out as far as when they go off. That gives you a much better overall score. Is it scarier? Sure. Is it crazy? Yeah, but that's playing to the edge that you get in best ball that we don't recommend for using in your normal regular leagues. But again, this isn't that. This is best ball. And on that note, I want to point out something that's very much something I bring up a lot is that I'm a big running back guy. And the reason for that is there are probably only 5-ish running backs every single week that you can consistently rely on giving you 15 points or more. And a ton of receivers, especially late, if they catch lightning in the bottle, they give you a huge week. We saw it from Mims a couple times. You're getting him in the late rounds. So there's a lot of guys out there at the receiver position who can just have a blow-up week. But that does not exist in the running back room, which is why I am, again, a running backs guy. And look at this, guys. Talk about what I am and getting where I want in the draft. Let's put this up here full screen for you all. We are looking at, as soon as it loads up here, going to be sitting here in the 3rd position. Super excited for this. And again, we'll put it up on your big board as soon as the thing loads up. In the 3rd position, I am squarely looking at Bijan. He is the guy that I want without a doubt. And I'm probably looking at the turn coming around and trying to snag up Bucky to try to give the first up and down answers as far as the direction in which I want to take everything and where it is that I want to go. So, guys, as always, we know we're getting a couple of people fluttering in here and there. Shoot out your questions. I know that Bob is the master of entering and bantering. That's his wheelhouse. But I am still here to answer all of the questions we have for you to make this an amazing interactive community, which is what we always go for. So as soon as a little yellow wheel becomes an official draft board, we will have it up here. But again, Bijan's definitely going to be the guy I'm going to be targeting here to start off this draft. No doubt about that. And we're on the clock. Let's go. And as I said, Bijan is going to be the pick here. Except for the fact that he just went. I can read well. So without Bijan, the next answer for me is Gibbs. I know that Saquon went off like crazy. And this is not to be a diminishment to anything about Saquon Barkley. But the reality is that that offense is loaded. Saquon himself is very injury prone. And I just feel that Gibbs is the much safer offense, given the fact that their offensive lines are pretty much comparable. And that's just how I feel as far as starting the point about my personal bias for taking Gibbs over Saquon. Also, by the way, Bijan over Saquon. Saquon, admittedly, and Henry fall in this category as well. As when is it going to break down? Saquon has shown the history of falling apart and breaking basically on an every other year basis. And yeah, I know that Philly just gave him an economic boost that really was really a more morale thing than a cap helping thing. And that just happened over the last couple days. But that doesn't mean that he's going to be able to hold up just as well. Phenomenal athlete, when healthy, one of the best in the league. But I would rather have the younger Gibbs who isn't showing me the propensity of missing half a season. And part of this is, as any other fantasy person will have gone through, you get burned enough times, you get gun shy of coming back. I've been burnt going to the Saquon store over the years, and it's one of these spots where I wasn't on him last year, but I was on King Henry. So it kind of balanced itself out. So coming back around here, we see the rest of the first round. I want to point out some things here. I was talking earlier about one of my problems with Garrett Wilson was the lack of spike weeks relative to the percentage of games played. When you look at the first round receivers, obviously Chase is its own animal. He's his own category. But J. Jeff was the next best one on a percentage basis of giving you the through the roof answers. And it's just a guy that I really would point out that we've taken Nico, we've taken J. Jeff before, especially whenever we knew how to balance out their quarterbacks. Well, it was easier earlier because we didn't know who J. Jeff's going to be. Darnold's not in Minnesota anymore. We know McCarthy is going to be the guy there. So when we look at this all in totality, I think that we're going to see these really start settling in. We're going to see some really deep receiver drops. I'm interested to see if Mac Jones, if Daniel Jones starts getting drafted now that there's a legitimate chance that he wins that quarterback competition in Indianapolis. Because let's face it, Richardson isn't the hardest person to surpass. And quite frankly, Richardson's probably better for that team if he's not their quarterback. Well, guys, you know that I'm super big on running backs, and there went the herd. Unless King Henry is still on the board, I'm going to have to go receiver. Because when we look at the running backs that are still here, King Henry, Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall, Kyron Williams, Chase Brown. Looking specifically at those as the next five up, King Henry is the only one that I am 100% on board with as being a stud for next year. The rest of them all have major question marks, especially when we look at the Jets outright. So it's not a situation that I thoroughly want to jump into. A guy that I'm really in love with that my propensity says I still have to take Josh Jacobs though. If Njigba is still here on the turn, I will take him, but I have to go with Jacobs, and the reason for that is Green Bay basically said that they don't know who they want to throw to, and Jacobs was the consistency plug of that offense. Certainly, Jacobs is a guy you do not normally see me draft, but in this running back space, I really do like having a plethora of them, and knowing that the rookies are starting to finally creep up to where they should be. We're specifically talking about Henderson and Hampton, who should be going to second and third round. I'm less confident that I will get both of them. But if I can have my first receiver being Njigba, I absolutely love that. And the reason is because he's the only show in town. They're probably going to get a rookie to compete with him, but at the end of the day, he's it. It's going to be a much, much more sophisticated offense compared to the college system that Seattle was running last year. And again, he went, life happens, The next one I'm going to take is T. Higgins. Last year, Higgins got injured, especially earlier in the year. But when he performed, he had one of the highest percentages of clipping above 20 points a game in a half PPR setting. So he has the absolute ability to stud out, and I love that about Higgins. And Higgins, quite frankly, should be in this beginning of the third, late second, especially if they extend him. Now, granted, all of the red flag concerns I said about Higgins last year, if he does not get extended and he's on the franchise tag, still will exist. Will he want to put out and go all in knowing he's a rent-a player? And that's something you really do have to worry about at the end of a contract year, knowing 100% next year, if he does not get extended this offseason, he will not be a Bengal next year. That's the only way in which he's there. And for the Bengals, quite frankly, they're much better off extending him now and getting their better cap situation. That, of course, all being about T. Higgins. So, guys, as we sit here, my next upcoming pick is going to be 46, followed up by was that 51. ADP wise, I should be able to get both Hampton and Henderson, which would be phenomenal because I'd be done at the running back position in the 5th round, kind of leaning into what I said earlier about willing to go all in on a particular slot, and then just play essentially receiver roulette. And it's something that I don't mind doing at all. So when I look at the roster and what could happen here, I am going to be breaking one of my rules, which is I will not complete the roster in the minimum amount of picks if I do take both running backs, being Hampton and Henderson. And there's just a simple fact of that. I'll be at a disadvantage for the number 3 receiver that I eventually put on the board and or my quarterback. But we've seen many drafts before we've done in the past when we have waited on quarterback and still really loved our teams. So Xavier Worthy, I don't want to dive into all the offseason stuff because they basically said they're not going to press charges. But very rarely do you see smoke and not have the fire reignite. Xavier Worthy has become pretty much instantly a don't rely on draft pick. And I'd way rather have Rishi. And by the way, this number 9 guy taking both Rishi and Worthy essentially told you he's going to be taking Mahomes when it comes back around. A little bit of interesting telegraphing that, quite frankly, some people pay attention to and some people don't. I'd be really surprised if Mahomes is not his pick in either the 5th or the 6th round. If I were him personally, I would do it in the 6th because the guy at the turn took Lamar there. So, team players, as always, remember, click like and subscribe. I have to drop that in there every once, so I'll get yelled at if I don't. I don't have Bob here to keep me in the straight and narrow. But send out your questions, guys. If there's a specific player you want me to talk about that I haven't gotten into, the upcoming draft strategy is where we're going to go here. I'm here to answer all of it and make it great. One of the guys who's coming up, he's listed as the highest player on the board right now, is DK Metcalf. Metcalf is obviously now a Steeler with George Pickens for the time being. I personally do not believe that both Metcalf and Pickens will be on the same field next year, despite the fact that they're on the same roster as of this moment in time. And the main reason for that is when the Steelers traded for Metcalf, they immediately gave him an extension. This is the offseason when you would give George Pickens an extension. And the reality is even though the quality of free agent quarterbacks has tremendously dwindled and the Steelers are kind of left holding an empty bag, the likelihood of them paying 2 receivers a significant payout is not historically the Steelers' way. And I highly doubt that they will do that. So when we're talking about having Metcalf on the roster, I just don't see it being all of the benefits that you would have had with Pickens. And I think he's going to end up being almost in the same vein as Pickens, where they're going to try to force it to him. But if there's no one else to help him without a number 2 receiver, he's a potential trap of getting caught. That being said, I am very big on George Pickens because someone is going to trade for him and love him. There's all kinds of great stats for it. And if Pickens somehow ends up being a number 2 receiver, he might be the best number 2 in the league, right there with with Higgins. So he's one of these guys that his stock should be slipping a little bit, but I don't think it should be slipping all of that much. I really do love George Pickens' game. His size you cannot replace. You can't teach big. Big is big. And that's one of the things that he obviously has in his repertoire. We'll see if he's still hanging around at my pick. That would obviously be a pretty big slide for him. His ADP coming into today was at 62, and I'm picking at 70. But if he slides, I will more than willingly jump up Pickens as my number 1 or as my next receiver. And another thing that Pickens has in comparison to Wilson going back before is he also has more games where he went off than 15 points than Wilson had. So again, Wilson is a fine, Garrett Wilson, that being, is a fine regular league guy to have. In the best ball space, he's not one of the dudes that I love because he doesn't give the big off explosions. But again, sitting here, I'm done at running back. And to be done at running back this early, I mean, I might throw in one of my late guys like Tootin, but to be done this early, I absolutely love it. And the reason, by the way, I keep being big on Brayshawn Tootin is that Tootin is a speed explosive guy. And I thoroughly believe, and you've seen it a little bit over the course of free agency here, that teams are pushing for the more explosive running back over the pass catching dash power running back. A couple years ago, it was all about breaking tackles, or catching the ball in the backfield. And I see a big shift towards wanting the overall speed. That's why I took Henderson instead of Junkins. You know, at the end of the day, Henderson has breakaway explosive speed. Hampton is going to be a first-round pick. So anytime you get a first-round pick, you know they're going to get the ball in incredible volume, and that's part of the game of fantasy football. But that's one of the things that I like about looking at the rosters and particularly building it out here. So looking for a number 2 receiver, one of the guys I'm going to want to avoid is the rookies. Unless and Ted already went. And that the reason for that is that, to me, the rookies, while have potential, the best one by far is Ted. And there's not even a guarantee that he's going to come out and be the world beater that you expect him to be. I'd much rather be in the Parasol kind of world. I love where his game could put him at this year. Judy's an interesting guy if he would slip to me here. And the reason he's interesting is because they have a quarterback in Kenny Pickett. Now, Kenny Pickett, I do not foresee as being great. Let me just start with that. He is a guy who, at least for his duration when he was a starter, was a stare down, not throw the ball until it's completely open. And that is a major problem for him. However, the one thing that Cleveland has shown is that they use Judy. And Judy put up numbers going off of total scores and averages right there with Garrett Wilson, which again is the same ballpark I'm at, and I'm getting him in the 6th round. I absolutely will take that. And if I can get Parasol on the comeback, I feel that I'm going to get all of what Debo should have been last year in this greatness. I am really excited for that and really like where this pick is at. So here we see that Mahomes goes, and the guy who was all in on Rice and Worthy ends up not taking him to take Judkins instead. For the build that guy was doing, I think that's a mistake. You should have had him there. All right. So that being said, there goes Parasol. He was one of my dudes. I'm still on the Ayuk bus. And this is really weird because this is going to be 3 straight Niner receivers picked. You do not normally see something like that crazy. But I really like Ayuk. And the reason for that is Ayuk's their big playmaker if he goes off. Welcome back, man. Crazy dip for Brees. Yeah, no, so if we look at Brees Hall specifically here, didn't really produce last year. People were drafting him in the early mid first round last year, and he bit you. There's no way around that. And we look at the Jets overall, and I'm not seeing a reason to have any form of confidence in the Jets, period. So, in that, they don't have an offensive line. They haven't had an offensive line in quite a while. Brees started seeing his target share and carry share dropping even when he was healthy. And we could be seeing the end of the fantasy relevancy of Brees. That being said, he's also a candidate for shooting right back if the Jets would somehow fix their line and give a reason for confidence. I go back to the default setting when we're looking at bad teams such as the Jets. I don't want to invest in them. I think they're going to be losing a lot. So I'm okay with taking their receivers because they're going to be forced to chuck the ball. Hence Jerry Jeudy on this roster. But Brees, I think, is just beginning his decline. When it's all said and done, I think Travion Henderson and Omar and Hampton are going to be going above Brees Hall. Brees Hall is in a world of trouble because of his situation. Now, granted, there's some other players that went before him, particularly Chase Brown, that I think could get beaten out in the by a rookie running back. But Brees should be dropping. I mean, just for lack of a nicer way to say it. And you look at this guy who drafted Brees, he's pretty much admitting it. You look at that roster of Henry, great. Hall, not happy with that. Mixon could be beaten out by a rookie as well. And then Tyrone Tracy, you pretty much know won't be beaten out by a rookie because the Giants need so much. And a lot of interesting non-stacking of players right here. Joe Burrow doesn't go to the Jamar Chase team. Interesting. Josh Allen is stacked up with Shakir. Okay, that makes sense. We do have Mahomes and A.J. Brown. That also makes sense. And one of the perks that I did here with how I built this roster is I gave myself 3 different teams to stack. Now, I'm not taking Kenny Pickett, so that one's off the board, and I can't take Burrow. So Purdy's probably going to be on my roster, knowing that, or looking at this here, that we have the simple fact that Ayuk is going to be one of my starting 3 receivers probably every week. And that's just one of the cool things here. Now, one of the things Bob always wants me to do is wait on Warren, see where he'll come to you. And I'm going to give that a slot. If I don't take him here on this first pick, which I'd rather take a receiver, I'm going to see if Warren comes back to me in the 9th. And part of that is also draft strategy. I see the 2 teams that are in front of me at the turn have both already taken tight ends. So my estimation is less Warren goes in the next 2 picks, he's still going to be on the board for me here. And that's how I look at this whenever I'm trying to evaluate who I should take and who I shouldn't. One of the things that when we're looking at this draft pick here, it's kind of a dead spot for receivers. While I like what the overall jolt of the Falcons offense could be, I'm not sure I want to get in bed with Mooney. And Mooney goes there anyway, so I don't have to. I'm going to be taking one of Bob's absolute beloved boys here in Marvin Mims, because Mims has a lot of things that I love about a best ball player. First, he has gone off and showed that he can grow and progress at the end of a season. Okay, awesome. The other thing that he did was he gave big explosive weeks. When he went off a lot. And that might have been something I should have been on alert for. Just talking about how there were 3 Niners receivers went in a row, the likelihood of me getting Purdy back. It might have been something I should have looked for, but I'd rather have Mims' explosion, certainly over a number 2 quarterback, which Purdy became for that guy. But that being said, I do got to start putting my eye onto the quarterback world. This guy taking Mims there, or taking Mims' stack and Bo, all good. All good. When we look at the quarterbacks that are on the board, who can I have that compare up with? That running's starting to get pretty thin here. So spot where I might have to put Pickens on this roster, and that is a very, very gross sentence that I just said. And I feel sad that I just said it, and I feel much shame for having said it, but I still think I have to do it. So I'm gonna put him in the late season queue as a very late pickup. Um, there's Kenny Pickett on the list now. Fields is a guy that I love. I know that he's a Jet, and everything I just talked about the Jets not having an offensive line is true and real. But Fields runs for his life, and the Jets give ample opportunity to have to run for your life. Fields as a running quarterback, I think, is going to be an absolute stud this year and something that I definitely want to look at. So his ADP has been rising precipitously since the last go around. I'm going to be targeting him probably as my 11th ish round pick. Hoping that I can get a quarterback here before it. So again, the quarterback I take before it is just going to have to be a high value best player on the board. Maybe they can blow up an Excel type guy. And right now, there's not a whole lot of them left. We got Baker, we got Love, Herbert, May, Dak, Stroud. Of that group, since they're all basically ADP'd right next to each other, by far, Dak and Stroud are my primary targets that I'd want to look at. Stroud, and to go off to complement that, I'm going to be looking at which receivers are still on the board since it's relatively a tie. Who am I more likely to be able to pick up in terms of playmakers from either Dallas or from Houston? And we see Schultz is still there. Could use him as a second tight end, pair him up with Stroud. Not exactly the sexiest combination. But there's not a whole lot of really, I got to jump out and get them because there's so many great Cowboys out there. There's a chance I have the Cowboys running back on my roster right now with one of those two rookies, but I'm not super excited for it. I might do a super late Mingo throw in here if I do go the Cowboy route. We look at the Houston players that are still here on the board. There's Stroud, Tank Dell, who just got essentially admitted that he's replaced. And, you know, it's a rough going because Christian Kirk just basically is Tank Dell. And to see him starting a little bit higher now that he's at a better offensive system, I do like that. So maybe I just play shotgun roulette with three quarterbacks who could all go off and start a little bit of a quarterback push here and take both Stroud and Dak. Because as I look at my other options on the board here, there's no one that feels I absolutely have to have. I mean, Leggett, Brian Robbins, I don't need any of the running backs. So we're looking at Leggett, Diggs, Trey Harris, QJ. Yeah, none of those guys are like, yeah, I need to have them. So I'm probably going double quarterback here. And saying that sentence out loud would make Bob go insane, but that's where we're at. So we're going to go double quarterback here, throw Fields in late. Again, the cool part of having both Stroud and Dak is both of them can be a top 5 quarterback in any given week. And that's what you want to have when you're going best ball. So there's other guys that go before here that I see zero chance of them being a top 5 quarterback more than 3 weeks this year. Caleb Williams being the top of this list. I see everyone out there saying, oh, Caleb Williams now has an offensive line. He's going to be so much better. This offensive line is going to make him amazing. He was at USC with one of the best offensive lines in the league and still got sacked nearly 80 times. It's on Caleb Williams for why he gets sacked. So I don't foresee him magically becoming an unsackable player and getting the ball out with quick, amazing judgment like he's Rodgers in his prime. I see a guy who's going to get lit up, who doesn't have enough arm strength to play in Chicago in the winter, and going to have a generally bad time. So that's how I view overall all of that answers for looking at why I'm not Caleb Williams. I'm sorry, Dark Side, for having to bring up how much Chicago's an issue, but they're in problem town. And, you know, you can't invest in smoke and mirrors, and that's what they did. So just a general fear for all the Chicago natives out there. But remember, Could be worse. It could be another team on the Great Lake that's absolutely horrible. On that note, just as a general science question, guys, is there something in the water in the Great Lakes that just leads to making bad football decisions? I mean, basically, until Dan Campbell showed up, those three franchises, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, and Buffalo, quite frankly, in that argument too, but definitely those three were three of the worst teams historically in the NFL. And I wonder if there's something in the water literally up there in the lakes. I'd love if there's any waterologist or whatever your title would even be who could chime in there. Wow, look at Justin Fields skyrocketing up to the 11th round. Really surprised by that. Did not think that would happen, but certainly his legs alone are going to carry him and get you a lot of value out of that pick. But it's time to re-enter the wide receiver roulette game, guys, because my boy Tootin just went as well. So when we look at the receivers who could potentially be on my board coming around here, I do like Coker's game. Coker looked really good on film. My question with him overall is a Carolina question, is will they put Coker, who had better tape than Leggett, ahead of Leggett? Obviously, Leggett had that injury he was coming back from, and it's hard to weigh all that into the circumstances. But it is a very real, legitimate question. So that's one of the guys that I would look at here. Coker and Leggett basically going in the same ballpark as each other right now. The rookies, again, I'm not super in love with the rookies at this stage in the draft. However, Trey Harris is going to go early, and players that go early tend to get the ball forced to them. That being said, we just saw Coleman give us basically nothing last year. Worthy, basically nothing. End of first round receivers. The only one that hit really was Ladd, and he was the beginning of the second round guy. But that whole area has no guarantee the same way that running backs do. And I'm actually changing my mind. I might go mega gross on this. As the thing is lagging up on me a little bit there. Sorry for that. I'm going to go mega gross. I'm going to go with a 2 receiver Cleveland stack. Cedric Tillman, I think, is going to be the second pick on this comeback, maybe the first pick. And really just accept the fact that we're putting Kenny Pickett on this roster, even though I'm wildly not happy about it. And just accept that as part of the cost of doing business. This will be a 3 quarterback, 4 running back roster when it's all said and done. Probably have 3 tight ends on it, and the rest will all be receivers. So that will be the direction in which we look there. And one of the things with Tillman was when he went off. Now, will they do that without Jameis? Not totally sure, but I would rather have him on the roster and find out, knowing that, again, I'm going Cleveland. And Cleveland's going to be a team that's losing a lot. Kenny's going to have to learn how to chuck it. And if he gets to a ballpark where he does and he matures as a quarterback and as a person, maybe he can. That year on the bench has done a lot for players in the past, and it totally could be one of the things that goes for him on today. So that being said, if Coker's still here, he's probably my guy. If not, it's going to be Alec Pierce. Not really excited about either one of those picks, quite frankly, but that would be the direction I go. I'll probably throw Mingo on this roster super late to get a Dallas connection, and Schultz as well. But Coker's there. Coker's the pick. Kind of hold your nose, but do it. Alrighty, so let's prepare here for the next go around. Our next draft pick up here will be pick overall. What will that be? About 160 or so. One of the cool things, guys, I hope I'm not lagging on you guys out there, as the internet machine here is not going great. Too many drafts going on, too much information for everything to compute here. And as we look at it on that note, these draft boards are getting completely changed and overhauled as we speak. It's one of the reasons that even though Bob's not here, I wanted to make sure that we did our drafts for all of the team players with us, because seeing the changes in the boards are radical. And this is where some of the picks that we had early on, I think really might have been better drafts than we're able to do today. And I'm sure that when I look back, there will be better drafts than we're able to do after the draft day, primarily because I won't be able to get the running back room that I built today. I will not be able to get Hampton, Henderson, Gibbs, and Jacobs. Like, I know I have for this pod, I won the running back room. And it's all comes down now to, can I get enough ammo and one-offs in the receiving room? And the guys I took here all are the high ceiling guys. Higgins, when he goes off, it's crazy. Ayuk, when he goes off, Mims, Tillman, even Coker. So I'm not taking really any floor people. And if I get a chance, I'm shooting for the moon. Alec Pierce would be right in that category if he comes back to me. Another guy that I like a lot that I think is way undervalued is Jordan Whittington. It's not official yet, but at 4 o'clock, well, I guess it might be official by now, Cooper Kupp's going to be cut. And Jordan Whittington is going to slide right into that spot. I really love where he's at. I know that the Rams just went out and they got Devontae Adams, but the number 3 in a heavy, heavy passing team, I absolutely love that situation. And Whittington is not going to be a guy I shy away from. Remember, the Rams basically only run 3 receiver sets. So he's going to be on the field all the time. And I really, really like his game. I really like where they're at and what it is that they're doing there. So let's see how this works out. Well, there goes Pierce. Again, it's a guy who's a high-quality pick, should have gone there. So we look at some other guys. Again, this is on Underdog, which is half PPR. So your Wan'Dale Robinsons of the world aren't really that valuable and or impressive. That being said, he is the next receiver up in terms of who they are recommending. So just a different direction there as far as for people to be alert of and paying attention to. Looking at the tight ends, I know that people always want to look like, who's your last tight end? Again, I have Warren. I really believe that Warren is going to be a top 5 or the top 5 tight end virtually every week. I get that it might be a little bit of a cheat code. I get that it is a point of exposure I am putting into my builds. But I thoroughly believe in Tyler Warren's skill set. And I normally don't believe in any rookie's tight end skill set. And there's ample evidence to show why you shouldn't. But he's a different dude. And that's just without a lack of a better way of saying it, it's just a fact of the game. He just is. But Whittington will be the pick if he comes around here. It probably will be Whittington and Schultz, taking Schultz a little bit early. But again, just making sure I have at least one player stacked with each of my quarterbacks. I'm okay with taking Schultz higher. He is by far the top Houston player left. And I'm not totally sure I'm going to get him come the 16th pick. So I'm okay with taking him a little bit earlier in that regard. So Schultz will be my next pick coming up here. Oh, man, I really hate this first player's quarterback room. He's going to be relying on Bo Nix, who is a prime candidate for a setback. You know, when Schultz showed up the first year, or correction, when Stroud showed up his first year, he blew up the world. Then he had a setback. Bo Nix, I think, is more likely to do that than Daniels. You put tape on him. Nothing about Bo Nix was incredibly unique or explosive when you watch his film. Bo Nix was able to run around and scramble, but there were a lot of times that a real quarterback, even a middle of the road one, would have been able to put the ball into the window for a touchdown rather than taking and running it himself. And I think that when you start treating Bo Nix as a running quarterback and you force him to prove it with his arm, he's going to struggle. That being said, I have Martavius Mims on this roster. So it's a catch-22 when you're looking at Denver. I also believe they are going to have one of the best running backs of the draft. And as a result, you're going to have a situation where his legs are just going to be used left. So I think the receivers of Denver are fine to go into, but I don't want to be invested in Bo Nix needing him to be a running quarterback because I just don't think it's realistic. So here we are with 5 picks left in this draft. There's no one really we have to put on this team. I'm incredibly happy with where it is at in every capacity. There's some players that I like a lot that I don't mind throwing in here. Jordan Mason's a guy that you guys see me talk about a lot. He's a guy that I really love in that department because I believe he's going to be the starting running back all year long in San Francisco, and I'm getting him crazy stupid late. That's a good thing. DeAndre Hopkins going right there. That's an interesting situation with him in Baltimore. Baltimore pretty much only runs 2 receiver sets, and he's slated to take Bateman out. But I'm not totally sure that it's a fantastic fit. I see what people are going for and looking at there, but it's a guy overall that not explosive, can't really get off the line. And the only way, I'm going to get on the DeAndre Hopkins bus is if Andrews is out the door, because he's a sit and still in zone, hit me with the ball, just like Andrews. He's not DeAndre Hopkins is not a separator. He's not a guy that you can truly rely upon to get you after the catch. And there's a lot of vulnerability that I can see DeAndre Hopkins being another guy who goes to Baltimore and just doesn't really do anything. I do not discount that as a real or maybe even probable possibility. So that's one of the situations there. Brandon Strange getting a starting tight end this late in the draft, same with Gesicki, I think are 2 decent enough pickups. My fear with Gesicki is that he basically only performed when Higgins is out. Do you want your tight end to be an injury risk type guy for him to get his situation? Strange is the opposite. The old regime, at least, forced the ball to the tight ends. Strange showed that he was capable of stepping up and doing that. So getting Strange is the one I'd much rather have over Gesicki. And that being said, if he's on the board here, I'm going to be taking Hunter Henry, finish out my tight end room, and because Mason went. No other real running backs I'm super excited about at this point. Maybe a late Damian Martinez, maybe. I'm not totally in love with Martinez. Martinez is going to be a power guy when it's all said and done. And he's got to be in the right situation. The other rookie running backs I've taken, any situation, they will be dominant. Martinez needs to be in the right situation. That being said, if he does end up in the right situation, he could be an absolute stud. Probably the ideal spot for him being somewhere like Pittsburgh, if they're willing to wait that long. Somewhere like Houston would be an ideal situation. These are all spots where they could be good fits for him. Hunter Henry sliding to me. Quite frankly, I would have taken Hunter Henry before the last 4 tight ends that went before him. Definitely before Kmet, Strange, Gesicki, and Ertz. Really glad that he fell to me there. Gonna be drafting another guy that I love, that should not be dropping this far. The iOS being the number 3 receiver in Cincinnati, prime for a step up, is one of my favorites round 17, 18 guys. I absolutely love where he's at. He's in an absolutely fantastic situation. And I think it's someone that really needs to be observed. And guys, I'm telling you right now that I'm getting away with murder. And the reason for that is that not too many people follow Cleveland Browns news. There's no reason to, quite frankly. But because I know that Kenny Pickett is a starting quarterback there. But because everything is sorted by ADP, he's not on anyone's board yet. So when we come to and around in August, Kenny Pickett's going to go in the 15th round. I'm going to get him in the 18th. So I look at that as just a bonus. You got to know the environment in which you're in to be able to exploit it. Again, not super excited that I built a Cleveland stack, but I did. And if you do it, finish it. There's part of it, if you're going down this road, finish it right. I'm going to end up with at least 9 receivers on this roster, possibly 10. So using 2 of them on receivers isn't the end of the world. And the reason by the way, I'm going to go with 10 receivers is I hit my running back room out of the park in the beginning of this draft. I have Gibbs, Jacobs, Omarion Hampton, and Henderson, all 4 of which will be starters. I know there's always injury risk, but when I have 4 starters that basically have no pressure from behind, accepting Gibbs' situation for what it is, I'm going to be golden. I don't need to use this, and I can play the roulette game of only give me high end, no floor receivers. And if you look at my guys, Higgins, high end or nothing. Judy, same deal. Ayuk, absolutely. Mims, Tillman, Coker, and Whittington in the iOS, all of those are all or nothing guys. So, we're going to spot here. We're going to finish up with 3 tight ends. We already got them. Warren is my guy and a half. Schultz and Hunter Henry, they are floor guys. But in case I'm wrong on Warren, they're also floor guys who flutter into the top 10 of the tight end world pretty regularly. So, really like where this draft is. I know how I'm going to finish it out here with Kenny being the next pick. Deontay Thornton is a guy that one of the team players brought up earlier. Absolute combine stud. Deontay Thornton. 6-foot infinity, ran a 4.4, can catch everything. Deontay Thornton could be a major dude in this league. He's going to be a guy that, again, I'm taking at the very end, but because there is massive potential there. He ends up on a roster as a late 3rd, 4th round pick. He could do some damage and be one of these guys that creep up on everyone during training camps where it's like, whoa, where did this guy come from? I mean, granted, he's a last round pick. It's kind of a long shot, but he has the tools and the traits in which it could happen. So Deontay Thornton will be my second pick here on this turn. It'll be Kenny Pickett and Deontay Thornton. So again, guys, this is one of the teams that it's very unique build for me. A very unique build for me, but I think I like it. Going 10 receivers and only 4 running backs, as someone who started the show about why I'm invested in running backs, is a unique thing. Because I look at these other running backs that are going around here, Garendo, Shipley, Braylon Allen. If a team has to rely upon these guys, they're going to game plan out of them anyway. They're going to go to their receivers. Even Kendre Miller, who was the heir apparent that never stepped up to take it. Justice Hill and Martinez are the only guys in really the last 5 rounds that I think are any valuable worth having. Ray Davis, no. Giddens, he's a rookie. If he gets in any of the rookies, they get in the right situation potentially. But Garendo, no, he's not the starter there. Mason is. So you look at all this around. There's a lot of people just going off of the short-term memory of where we left off. Part of this is that the list that all of us make as our true draft boards, we don't make until after the draft. So there's a lot of just kind of people going in the wind, and they're going in the wind incorrectly. So as we're wrapping up this draft here, again, team players, make sure you click like and subscribe. Been talking nonstop here for an hour. But yeah, it's been an absolute blast. Here to answer any questions on the shout outs. And yeah, here comes Deontay Thornton, man. You can't teach 6'5" and 4'4". You can't. He's the same measurables as Ted, but I'm getting him in the last round. To me, it just seems from a traits warfare standpoint like an absolute crazy ass value. And I'm super excited here that I'm picking him up this late in the draft. I mean, it's certainly someone that I'm glad that I got. And then, like I said, the last pick here will be Mingo because he is the best Cowboy remaining, and I want to have someone to pair up with Dak. Probably will never give me anything when it's all said and done, but to me, it's a debate between Mingo and Tolbert. the fact that they traded for Mingo was a second round pick. I know Tolbert was as well. But the fact that you go out and you trade for him makes me lean to believe that he's going to be the guy that they lean on when it's all said and done. That being said, Tolbert has been the top player on the board here for quite a number of picks. His ADP is 205. So he's the guy that everyone sees. And lo and behold, you say his name enough times, someone goes ahead and drafts him. So absolute great draft, everyone. Send your questions in because I am in the Q&A portion at the end because the last round picks normally aren't that exciting. We appreciate everyone who has stuck with us through the entire duration of the episode. This is now effectively a live Q&A, guys. So send them at me. If not, I'm just going to keep breaking down how awesome my roster was, which, by the way, was awesome. So let's look at some of the teams I'm going to be fighting against here in this pod, see who I'm actually worried about, who I shouldn't be. I got so much of my own space, I didn't really start worrying about it. The guy in the first pick tends to have a really hard spot because you have to take Jamar Chase. And then after Jacobs and Bucky are gone, there's no running back worth taking. Granted, he completely fumbled by taking McBride way too early. I talked a little bit earlier today, guys, about my fears with Metcalf. I'm not going to get on the Metcalf bus unless George Pickens is still in the Steelers post the draft. Because until then, I'm just worried about it. Caleb Johnson is a fine rookie, but as your first running back and then not having a second one until DeAndre Swift, which means you don't have one. Then Tanks Bigsby is his next guy. He's going to be struggling filling out a starting lineup each and every week in that second running back position. So certainly not worried about the first team in this draft. Again, his quarterback was Caleb Williams. I spent an ample amount of time hating on that. The next guy here, Bijan, Ladd, Njigba, Tet, Kittle, Mahomes, Purdy, Jennings. This guy could be a dude. This guy has a potential roster here. His second tight end is ETN. Really worried about that. J.K. Dobbins probably is not a starter in the NFL, period. So he's very thin at that running back department. He needs to rely upon what will probably be a fifth-round running back, 2 fifth-round running backs to bail him out. That's a very weak build there from the number 2 team. Obviously, I'm the 3 team. You guys saw what I did. The number 4 team here, Saquon, A.J. Brown, Hurts, Garrett Wilson. Got to love a Philly stack. Although one thing you got to remember is that everyone's preparing to beat the Super Bowl champs. But if you can build a Philadelphia stack at any point, you do it. Hubbard was one of the most underappreciated running backs in the league last year. Reed, Ridley, Mooney, between the 3 of them, you'll get a decent number 3 receiver every week. The guy in the number 4 hill built a pretty good team. Obviously wasted the pick there in Stevenson, but built a pretty decent team overall. Guy in the 5 slot starts with 5 receivers. His team's over. I don't even need to focus on it. That is one of the worst strategies you can do, starting with 5 straight receivers. Because, and then to go on top of it, 7 of his first 8 picks are receivers. That roster is unsustainable. Pacheco and Connor are not starting. B-Rob, maybe he holds on to his job, but that is your number 1 or number 2 running back each week. Isn't going to do it. Herbert and Pickett and Penix. Yeah, and then his number 1 tight end is Kyle Pitts. Number 5's out of the radar. In fact, I'm going to stop scrolling down and just focus here on the top 8 rounds. As we look here, I do like the starting point of Henry, but I don't like Hall, Mixon, and Tracy. I feel like we could have done a lot better with our first 7 picks out of there. With the 7 team, love Devontae, Minko, Bucky start. Jalen Daniels is probably being overdrafted right now, but you forced him with the stack with Debo. There's potential here with the 7th team. They'll probably be right around the top 4 players. The 8th team here with Amah, A-Chain, Kyron, Aaron Jones. My problem here is Kyron, Aaron Jones, not necessarily his receivers. His receivers are actually really good. between Kyron and Aaron Jones, you might not have either one actually being a starter next year. I know that Aaron Jones got re-signed up, but the chinks are in the armor, and Kyron Williams is a very draftable replacement. Damian Martinez there could take his job. Next spot over, this 9-hole I'm starting to fall in love with a little bit more every day. I would rather personally him have taken A-Chain instead of Harrison, but with the running backs of Cook and Kenneth, those two aren't going to get taken away. Golden's not my favorite rookie in the draft, but when you're talking about a flex guy, he could build it. Kyler Murray, either love him or you hate him. I've always been in the hate him bus. Number 10 guy has Genty, Brown, Najee. Again, I'm really low on Brown. We look at his receivers of being Puka, Sutton, Pickens, Shazier. There's a lot of red flags there, a lot of wait and sees. Maybe he runs the gauntlet and it all comes out perfect. I'm just not trusting in it. 11 with JT, Neighbors, and then the two Kansas City receivers. I think that he left himself exposed. I think Kamara is a completely wasted pick. Ekambuke, more of a possession guy. Not sure you're going to get an explosion for a half PPR league. And then Christian McCaffrey could be a 0. Brock Bowers, way too early for a tight end at 13 overall. I like going out from Lamar, Zay, and Waddle on, but you can't blow your first 2 picks like that. So, guys, that's how we ended up with this draft. We thank you all for being with us, being team players, and we will be with you guys again here on Monday. You guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you guys then. Hey, team players, let me announce an amazing thing that's going to be coming down the pike here. A fantasy football cruise. You're going to get all the big stuff. The +1, the balcony room, the all-you-can-eat, premium deluxe package for beverage, great destinations we're going to, and for the days at sea, a breakdown of every single NFL team with 2 big money buy-in drafts. What we're asking from you is 2 things. First, would you be interested in wanting to be a part of it? And second, who are the other guest speakers we should be inviting on to break down the teams and doing the draft with us? Team players, we'd love to see you at sea, and welcome aboard to our fantasy football cruise hosted by Elite Business Cruises.